Chapter 1. Awakening. In the heart of a long-abandoned building, where the walls crumbled and the ceiling leaked from years of neglect, a flicker of light pulsed within the darkness. The building, once grand and filled with the laughter of children, was now a ghost of its former self. The sound of dripping water echoed through the halls, mingling with the rustling of vermin that had claimed the space as their own. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until it became a steady drone that resonated through the cracked tiles and dust-covered floors, waking something, or someone, deep within the structure. With a sudden jolt, Pink Barrington's eyes lit up. His dim, glowing orbs scanned the room as his systems booted up, struggling to catch up with the sudden influx of energy. He flexed his mechanical joints, which creaked and groaned like an ancient machine. The bright pink paint of his fur was chipped and worn, revealing the dull metal beneath. But Pink Barrington, as everyone knew him, was back online. As his sensors adjusted to the environment, he was met with a landscape of decay. The room was unfamiliar, yet there was something eerily nostalgic about it. It was a large hall, once full of life and activity, now lifeless and decrepit. The walls were lined with mirrors, cracked and distorted, reflecting fragmented pieces of the room back at him. The chandeliers above were shattered, their crystals scattered across the floor like broken dreams. Dust particles floated in the air, catching the dim light filtering through the dirty windows. "Where am I?" Pink Barrington's voice, usually cheerful and full of energy, echoed through the empty space, sounding strangely hollow. His internal system struggled to recall any recent memory, but all that came up were fragments, disconnected and fuzzy. Taking a cautious step forward, his heavy footsteps reverberated through the silence, each movement sending a small cloud of dust swirling into the air. As he moved, he noticed the remnants of what appeared to be a stage, the curtains tattered and moth-eaten. The faded velvet fabric, once rich and opulent, now hung in shreds, swaying slightly in the breeze that seeped through the broken windows. A memory stirred within him, flashes of bright lights, cheering crowds, the sound of laughter. But those were distant memories, faded like the once vibrant colors of the room. Pink Barrington's joints creaked with the weight of years, his servos whining softly as he made his way closer to the stage. He could almost hear the echoes of a time long past, the melodies of old shows reverberating faintly in his auditory circuits. But now the silence was oppressive, the emptiness of the room a stark contrast to the vibrant energy it once held. His synthetic stomach, though purely a part of his programming, rumbled. The need for sustenance was an old habit, a relic of routines programmed into him. Pink Barrington craved something to eat, even though he didn't technically require food. His circuits buzzed with the thought of food, preferably chicken or popcorn, the favorites he once served to those who visited his shows. He could almost taste it now, the buttery popcorn melting on his tongue, the savory flavor of chicken filling him with warmth. But where could he find food in a place like this? The building had been ravaged by time, its cupboards likely empty, its pantries bare. Yet he knew he had to try. Maybe, just maybe, he would find something. As he wandered through the hallways, each more decrepit than the last, the eerie silence was interrupted by a faint sound. It was distant, almost imperceptible, but Pink Barrington's sensitive ears caught it. A soft whimper, like someone calling out for help. "Mr. Marionette," he whispered, recognizing the voice. It was weak, almost drowned out by the creaking of the old building, but it was unmistakably his old friend, Mr. Marionette. A cold shiver ran down Pink Barrington's spine, or at least the closest thing an animatronic could feel to a shiver. Mr. Marionette had always been there, a constant presence by his side. They had performed together, entertained countless children together, and now, after all this time, Mr. Marionette was in trouble. Pink Barrington hurried toward the sound, his quest for food temporarily forgotten. He stumbled through darkened corridors, his footsteps echoing louder as his urgency grew. The walls seemed to close in on him, the shadows growing longer and more oppressive. He pushed forward, driven by the need to find his friend. As he reached the source of the sound, he found himself standing before a large door, its wood rotting and splintered. It was slightly ajar, and the whimpering was louder now, more desperate. Pink Barrington hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. The room beyond was small, almost claustrophobic, with only a single, flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The floor was littered with debris, and in the center of the room was a figure huddled in the corner. It was Mr. Marionette, his once pristine black and white form now faded and worn, his strings tangled and broken. "Mr. Marionette!" Pink Barrington exclaimed, rushing to his friend's side. Mr. Marionette looked up, his hollow eyes meeting Pink Barrington's. "Pink Barrington," he whispered, his voice weak and trembling. I thought I was lost forever. What happened to you? How did you end up here?" Pink Barrington asked, gently helping Mr. Marionette untangle his strings. "I don't know," Mr. Marionette replied, his voice barely audible. "I remember the show ending. Then darkness. I woke up here, but I couldn't move. I couldn't find you." Pink Barrington felt a pang of guilt. He should have found his friend sooner. "You're safe now. We're together again." Mr. Marionette managed a weak smile. "Yes, together." As Pink Barrington helped Mr. Marionette to his feet, a sudden thought struck him. "Mr. Marionette, do you know where we can find food? I'm starving." Mr. Marionette shook his head slowly. "I haven't seen any food. This place, it's empty." Pink Barrington's circuits buzzed with frustration, but he pushed the feeling aside. The most important thing was that they were together again. They would figure out what to do next. As they left the room, Pink Barrington kept a protective arm around Mr. Marionette. The building was still a labyrinth of decayed rooms and crumbling hallways, but it no longer felt as menacing. They had each other now, and that gave Pink Barrington the strength to keep going. Together, they continued their search, not just for food, but for answers. What had happened to the world they once knew? Why had they been abandoned in this place? And most importantly, was there anyone else out there? The journey was long, and the answers didn't come easily. But Pink Barrington knew one thing for certain. As long as he had Mr. Marionette by his side, he wouldn't give up. They would find what they needed, no matter how far they had to go, no matter how many obstacles stood in their way. And so the two friends ventured deeper into the mysterious building, the flickering lights guiding their way. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty halls, a reminder that they were still here, still searching, still hoping. In the darkness, Pink Barrington smiled. They would find food, they would find others, and together they would rebuild what had been lost. Because no matter what the future held, Pink Barrington and Mr. Marionette would face it side by side, just as they always had.